two or more amino acids can combine to form the amide bond, more commonly known as the peptide bond, to form polyamino acids known as peptides or polypeptides. Now, peptide, polypeptide, and protein usually mean the same exact thing. These words are used interchangeably to mean the same exact thing. Now, these peptides are usually drawn and named always beginning with the amino terminus of our amino acid on one end and ending with the carboxy terminus on the last amino acid on that peptide chain. So to see exactly what we mean by that, let's combine two amino acids. Let's combine alanine and glycine. Now, when alanine and glycine combine via the dehydrolysis reaction, we form our peptide bond, which is the bond that exists between the carbon on the carbonyl group on one amino acid and the nitrogen on the amino group on the other amino acid. So on this amino acid, we have a free amino group. On the other amino acid, we have the free carboxylate ion group. So this free amino is basically our amino terminus end, and this free carboxylate ion is our carboxyl terminal end. And whenever we draw or name our polypeptides, we always begin with the amino acid that contains the free amino group, and we end with our amino acid that contains the free carboxylate ion group. So for this case, it's named alanine-glycine, or simply ALA and GLY. So instead of actually writing out the name of each one of our amino acids, instead, we usually use the three-letter abbreviations of each one of our amino acids. So alanine and glycine can combine to form this dipeptide, and the peptide bond is shown in red. And we usually name the polypeptides by using three-letter abbreviations, always beginning with the amino acid on our amino end and ending with the amino acid on our carboxylate ion end. Now, the sequence of amino acids in any given protein, in any given peptide, makes up the primary structure of that protein. So this sequence is always described in the way that we discussed it just a moment ago, by beginning with the first amino acid found at the amino terminal, which is designated with the letter N, and ending with the last amino acid found on the carboxyl terminal, which is designated with the letter C. For example, if we look at the following 6 amino acid chain, we have glycine, tyrosine, glycine, histidine, methionine, alanine. The first amino acid in that chain is always our amino terminal. It contains the free amine group. And the last amino acid is always the carboxyl terminal. It contains our free carboxylate ion group. Now, as the peptide chain elongates, as it grows, as we add more amino acids to our carboxyl terminal, we basically increase the size of that chain, and as we increase it, that chain can basically begin to bend. And as it begins to bend, we have intermolecular interactions that begin to take place between the oxygen of the carbonyl group on one amino acid and the hydrogen on the amino group of a different amino acid. And this leads to the formation of a structure known as the secondary structure. And we have two types of secondary structures. We have the alpha helix and we have beta pleated sheets. So once again, as the peptide chain grows longer, the chain begins to bend when the amino group of one section on the peptide moves close to the carbonyl group on another section of that same peptide. Intermolecular bonds begin to develop. These intermolecular bonds, known as hydrogen bonds, basically take the linear molecule and bend it and give it a certain type of well-defined shape known as the secondary structure. So we have one type known as the right-handed alpha helix, and we have the beta pleated sheets. So let's discuss the beta pleated sheets first. So let's imagine we have our chain, and as we increase the number of amino acids, this chain begins to bend. And it could bend in the following fashion. So if we imagine we have a straight chain, it bends and it forms an anti-parallel straight chain where it goes in the opposite direction. It bends again, it goes this way and so forth, as these different linear sections basically stack on top of one another. When they stack, we form hydrogen bonds between the H atom on the amino group of one amino acid and the oxygen on the carbonyl group on a different amino acids. And these are our hydrogen bonds that hold this secondary structure together, the beta pleated sheets. Now, we also have a structure known as the alpha helix. And instead of forming these types of interactions, these types of bending, we basically have the bending around some type of structure, some type of axis. So if we imagine we have the x-axis as shown here, and we have the coiling of our linear chain that takes place, these coils are held together in the same way that these sheets are held together by the hydrogen bonds that exist between the carbonyl group of one amino acid and the amino group on another amino acid. And these type of structures make up the secondary structure of our proteins. Now, all proteins contain the primary structure. Most proteins contain our secondary structure. In fact, most proteins that contain secondary structure, they contain both our beta pleated sheet sections and sections that contain the alpha helix. So any given large protein can contain both of these types of secondary structures. Now, whenever a peptide or a protein develops a three-dimensional structure, that is known as the tertiary structure. So the tertiary structure is the three-dimensional shape that is formed when the peptide, the polypeptide, curls up and bends. So we form this three-dimensional shape. Now, there are different interactions, different forces that create this three-dimensional shape. And all these interactions are a result of electric forces, electrostatic forces between opposite charges. So we have different types of interactions that basically form the tertiary structure. So we have disulfide bridges or disulfide bonds, we have van der Waals forces, we have hydrogen bonds, and we have hydrophobic and hydrophilic interactions. So let's discuss each one. So disulfide bridges are basically the covalent bonds that exist between the side chains of two cysteine molecules. So this is a sulfur bond, a sulfide bond. Now, van der Waals forces are basically the forces that exist as a result of electrostatic interactions, as a result of the instantaneous or non-instantaneous dipole moments that exist on our molecule. Hydrogen bonds are basically the bonds between the carbonyl group of one amino acid and our amino group on the other amino acid. And hydrophobic interactions are basically the interactions between the water solvent and our side chains, the side groups found on our amino acids. So remember, amino acids contain different types of side chains. We have polar and non-polar side chains. We have acidic and basic side chains. Now, proteins are usually found in water. So that means the side chains that are polar will be found on the surface of that three-dimensional structure, while the side chains that are non-polar will try to hide from the water solvent, which is polar, and so those will be pushed towards the inside of that three-dimensional structure, and this will influence the structure of that protein as a whole. So the last type of interaction exists when the protein is found in water. So the hydrophobic side chains of the amino acids are pushed away from the water inside that protein, and that influences the three-dimensional orientation and shape of our molecule, of our peptide. Now, finally, there is also something called quaternary structure. So when two or more polypeptide chains join together to form a single unit via electrostatic forces, we form a structure known as quaternary structure. And one example is the hemoglobin molecule. So hemoglobin is basically the protein that carries oxygen in the human body, and hemoglobin itself consists of 4 units of 4 polypeptides that are held together by these electrostatic forces. So we have 3 levels, or actually 4 levels of structure in any given protein. We have the primary structure, we have the secondary structure, we have our tertiary and quaternary structure. Now, it turns out, as we'll see in a future lecture, the primary structure, the sequence of our amino acids in the protein, determines the tertiary structure, the shape, the three-dimensional shape and orientation that our protein will take.